I want to move right on to our segment because we're at an hour and a half now. How to know if a game is not for you. Jake, talk to me. Jake and Dmitry, I want you guys to start this conversation off. I feel that, I don't love everything. You know that. When we talked about gatekeeping, I confessed that I do gatekeep and I do look down on some games and I do criticize a certain game. So I'm definitely still in that crowd. That said, I think my tastes are fairly broad. I like
Catholic.
Yes, I know the sense you mean that word, and I will accept it. Yeah, I listen. I have a ton of party games in my collection. I got light, I got heavy, I got war games. I like a lot of different types of games. So while I do still have games that are definitely not for me, I think that the categories that they go in tend to be more narrow. I want to hear from you guys. Tell me, how do you find it?
Can I just say, first of all, that even though it's my episode and Dmitry is my guest, and so happy to have him, credit where it's due, this was his suggestion for our segment. And I immediately loved it. He mentioned it to me, and it totally started exploding in my mind. And he also really helped sort of define the categories. We talked a little bit about this, obviously, beforehand, and I think it would be pretty ridiculous for me to step all over his toes when we dance. So I kind of would love it if he would lead us through this, and of course, not just diatribe, but like I really want you guys to hear it the way he explained it to me, because he crystallized my thinking on this immensely.
All right, Dmitry.
I think for both Jake and me, the number one thing of how we know a game is not for us is if we don't like looking at it. If I don't like...
Absolutely.
Jake, I think you can, the way you put it is the best.
Now, when you say that, does it sound shallow?
Well, I mean, even if it is, it's a pure response. I mean, right? People work hard to put this thing in front of your face. You're going to spend time with it, and it either clicks or it doesn't. And I think that works across many media. I mean, it's not just movies or books or games or anything. When we see something, we're going to have a gut reaction to it. And I for sure am very much in that category of if I'm looking at something that I don't like, it's going to make it harder for me to engage.
When you have a teach, you have to look at the board and the components.
Yep.
With concentration and focus. When you're playing the game, Jake, you look at the boards and you look at the components. If you don't like looking at the board and the components, you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to have to force yourself to focus on it. And it's not going to be an enjoyable experience. Why would you go through it again? For me, the number one game that I hate, despise the look of is Food Chain Magnet. I hate the cadaverous blue color of it. I hate the cutesy 50s style art and the tiny print on the cards. And I hate the dotted dashes that represent the streets. I can't focus on it. It just slides off my retinas in a way that I can't bring myself to care. Is there a game you can think of that does that for you, that you might think you might enjoy playing, but it's not even ugly, it's just too unengaging or plain?
Yes, for me, I did think about this, and I'm not going to pretend to remember all the names, but all the 18XX railway games.
Yep.
Like, I know there's something really interesting happening there. I know it because I had a moment I only played one or two of them, but I did have a moment where I was like starting to see the complexity kind of in my brain, but it's just a bunch of lines. And like, I just can't. It doesn't feel like I'm in a world. It doesn't feel like I'm on a train or, going across the country. And I think that one is a roadblock for me, an example of it that way.
And Tom, I think you like that. I think for you, that kind of handmade, simple look, for you, it like is almost nostalgic, and you enjoy that kind of thing, right?
Okay. So when I started playing games, I was used to games that looked awful. Listen, the design was functional. It was put these things on this. I played games like Wiz War. I mean, the original ChessX Wiz War.
I remember playing that with you.
Oh yeah, just these horrible little chits, and your chit is that one, and everything's beat up, and the cards aren't even they're not even covered. They're just paper. They're just raw paper, and they're disintegrating in your hands. And I love that game. They made a new Wiz War, and it is big and glossy and has standees and all that sort of stuff. And I hate it. I hate that game. It's awful. It's just a piece of junk. It's a bimbo. It lost all of its character. I like the old handmade games. I don't like all of them, though. I don't like them just because of that. Literally, the look of a game is such a non-factor to me. It's what is the game? For me, it's all about personality. I look beyond the physical, and I go right to the personality. That's me.
Yeah, not me at all. I'm way more on, like, I like to get to the personality, but for me it's a roadblock what it looks like first.
Splatter games, because
I think you yeah.
Food Chain Magnate is a splatter game, and splatter games are not the easiest on the eyes. They're just not. Even a great one like Indonesia.
Indonesia is an excellent example of them actually saying, no, let's have a good-looking game, and it's not that hard.
Sort of, but it's non-functional. It's a beautiful board that doesn't work very well. So it creates a problem. Even when they do it right, they do it wrong. But the personality of those games are astonishing. I love them. I love the way they make me feel. I love the way they challenge me.
So Dmitry, let's get back to some of the other criteria that we sort of had discussed.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, for me, the next one on the top of my list, though there were quite a few that you came up with, was the obvious complexity. Like if there is clearly many balls to be juggled, that might be something that will turn people off. Like for me, I know I'm not going to engage if it's too complex immediately. I just know I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm not saying I might, not enjoy it if I had 10 years to really delve into it, but just on the face of it, like, oh, here's a new game, and I can see right away it's way too complex, like, or what do they call that? Like the weight of it.
Yeah. Then
I'm immediately turned off.
So you're saying the game...
And that's me. And maybe that's very much, as the casual gamer. But there's a lot of people out there who can use that as a way to look at this and be like, if you know that you don't like a game that's going to be too taxing to enjoy for you, that's definitely one of the categories you can immediately identify.
So you're saying the game has to be handsome and have a maximum of 2 balls. Got it.
I mean,
like you,
amount
Tom,
of balls are going to vary. Some of us only have 2. I can't speak for what you're carrying around, but I know that I'm not going to enjoy it if I'm going to have to struggle to enjoy it.
I want to generalize that a little bit and just say basically know your limit. For me, the limit is not complexity but length. I love the Estates. The Estates is a fight in a phone booth, but it only lasts 45 minutes. I can stand a fight in a phone booth for 45 minutes. 4 hours of a fight in a phone booth for me is too much. So the interactivity, ferocity, how much you are at each other's throats, difficulty and length are all very like tangible limits that you can find out about before, and the combinations of those limits.
Yeah,
I'd be perfectly happy to play a 4.5 difficulty game in 2 hours, like Barrage. I'm not sure if it's 4.5 difficulty, but
no, it's not that high. But it's high. It's good.
Like 4.2 or
4.0,
something like that. So like Barrage looks ugly, and is very hard and is often very cutthroat, but it's also 2 hours, and suddenly it goes from being, if it were a 4 or 5 hour game, I wouldn't even look at it. At 2 hours, I love it. It's one of my absolute favorite games. those limits are very useful, and know yours, and then you can like tell in advance, even before playing a game, that it might not be for you, and definitely after a first play.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know if the other factors are in place are correct, like if it's not too complex and I like the way it looks, I could play it all night long. I could just go until I pass out. But that's probably because I'm not burning so much of my brain power to do it, and I can just cruise through and enjoy it.
Yeah, I get that.
I think you are, again, the opposite. You like to exercise.
Yeah, it's almost there is almost no upper limit to complexity. Now, there's not no upper limit to complexity. There are some war games where, I start reading them, Campaign for North Africa, I start reading them like, oh, out, I'm out. You got me. You sons of guns, you did it. You killed me. You killed happy complex Tom. But no, for the most part, yeah, as heavy as you want to get, you can go to me with that. My objection tends to be on the other end of the scale.
The floor, not the ceiling, because there are two kinds of limits. The floor, right?
Yes, and not just the floor, because
if it's too easy, you're not going to get into it.
I don't mind a light game. What I mind is a game that doesn't challenge me in any way. And there's a difference between lightness and challenge. When I say that I'm allergic to miniatures, what I mean by that is that most miniature games are a lot about dice rolling and relatively little about strategy. I'm painting with a broad brush, and there are many examples that counteract the point that I'm making. But for the most part, those are games in which there is a lot more luck going on than there is strategy, and the strategy that there is oftentimes centered around building up an army in this form or in that form. I'm thinking of Warhammer and games like that. Whereas for me, I would much rather have like if battle strategy and tactics and the way the campaign is organized, if those are the things, the behaviors that are rewarded, deep thought that goes into it, and that's what wins the campaign. That's more my.
But we both love Eclipse, where you build up an army technically in Eclipse.
Yeah, no, Eclipse is the exception that proves the rule, right? Eclipse, for me, is nostalgic to what those kinds of miniature games used to be, right? Eclipse is far more strategic than all of those other games. You are building an economy, right? The tiles that you choose to populate, the place that you choose to attack, the places that you colonize, each one of them has a huge impact on your economy. It decides whether or not you are going to be a technologically forward campaign, whether or not you're going to run a campaign where you're building ships in large numbers in order to swarm people. And there's a lot of strategy that goes into that game, and that's why for me it's the exception that proves the rule. It's a game that does have miniatures, that does do all of those sorts of things, but does it in a thoughtful way, and in which I feel like the dice are not the dice are certainly affecting the game, but the dice are not deciding the game.
And you can tell that from the description of the game.
Yeah,
you can tell that in advance.
You certainly can. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So a third, but maybe the most important thing, is know who you'll be playing the game with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If I'm playing with any of you guys, I'm just going to stay home.
Well, like when I played Everdell,
yes,
I hated Everdell. One of the main reasons I hated Everdell is I was playing it with serious, very good players who don't get to play much, and so took a very long time optimizing their turn. And what should be a 90-minute game turned into a 3.5-hour game. And it was kind of like watching like an Avengers movie at half speed.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. No. That'll kill you, right? And even the best game in the world on the wrong day with the wrong crowd can be laborious.
Yeah, it'll be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yep. So, Jake, who are the people in our group that you don't like to play with?
Well, let's see. Do you want it alphabetically or by weight?
What did you say? By weight?
Alphabetically.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
By
No,
weight.
I love you guys, and I miss you like crazy pants because you're like a super clever, intelligent group of people that like the stuff I like. That's hard to find.
Yeah, I agree. I do think you're right, Dmitry, that the group that you play a game, and especially the first time, can really color that game for a very long time.
Can you think of any examples, Jake? Of like game nights?
Examples of games where I might not have liked it if I hadn't been playing it with you guys?
Or just the opposite. Or just the opposite, where you might have not liked it because we were like the people around you were taking a long time, or yeah.
Well, I mean, I will say that I can think of a couple of games where analysis paralysis on the part of other players definitely stifled my interest in ever playing it again. But that's also kind of small-minded of me because clearly you can't blame the game for that. You know what I mean? If you were playing it with somebody who was a little more easy-peasy about it, it might be more fun. But no, I can't say I can really, point fingers in that regard. I've been pretty lucky with enjoying just, if not the gameplay, but the company surrounding the gameplay with just about all the games that we've tried. There's only been one or two times ever in all the game nights I've ever had with this group of friends where the game was so outside my reach that like I felt bad to be sort of bogging down everybody else. Like I knew I wasn't even really competing or playing, or just like I was just a placeholder, and everybody was so focused that I was just like, I could just not be here. And I don't even remember which game that was, but that's very rare, very rare.
As Alfred said,
group, I would say.
As Alfred said last week, you have to play to win. It's not important to win, but if you're not playing to win, you're not yourself or having the right game experience, and you're not giving your fellow players the right game experience.
Yeah. That's correct. And sometimes if I find myself out of my depth, then I just do the best I can. But there have been one or two times where I was just like, there's literally no way I'm going to affect the outcome of this in any way, shape, or form. And, I could see myself tuning out. And I seem to remember the next day or two, somebody was like making comments like, Jake was on his phone all night last night. And it's because I couldn't focus on the board. The meeples were just like yelling at me. So I was probably looking down at my phone playing some very simple, like mind wipe game in the meanwhile.
Paul tells me that Trey is just like you. That for Trey, the most important thing is to be able to make meaningful decisions.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't feel like he makes meaningful decisions, or he can make meaningful decisions from beginning to end, he will tune out. He will stop playing a game 2/3 of the way through if it becomes obvious that he's the winner, or somebody else is the winner. I guess like the pinpoint here is if you don't feel like you can make meaningful decisions in the game.
Well, there are even with Trey though, there's other things going on than just that. That's one of the main criteria for him, and it rules a lot of games out for him. And the exact same thing goes on for me. But there are other things. Like Trey doesn't like real-time games. Captain Sonar. Can't play Captain Sonar.
Tom, nobody likes Captain Sonar.
I love Captain Sonar.
Okay, you're the only person
Captain
who
Sonar.
likes
Captain Sonar is awesome, but Trey has a visceral reaction against Captain Sonar. Part of it is the tracing thing, because when he's nervous, his hand shakes a little bit. But also, he does not. Nothing hits his pleasure center at all when he's under a time pressure to perform. That doesn't work for him.
I'm the same exact way.
Right. There you go.
I'm 100% the same as that. I might not have thought of that, but that's completely for me the
tell
same
me
thing.
what makes you that way? How do you know that you're gonna be under time pressure, and what does that do for you?
Well, I mean, I can't recall too many examples at all of games that the clock is ticking. I mean, I tried doing chess that way once, and it was a disaster. But like our games, there's not usually that. You know, Pictionary, sometimes they've got the little thing that you turn over and you got to draw fast. But like in our games, we don't really have that.
We tend not to play those games because there are some people in our game group that are averse to them. So it becomes a hard thing to play. Matt doesn't like any pretty much cooperative games. He does not find them interesting or involving. He feels like it's like you're sitting down and you're all doing a jigsaw puzzle together. He has said before, you know.
I love that though.
Right. So, but
I'm opposite him in that regard.
So people
you wanted to make a co-op out of Elfinland.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a great idea.
I was thinking it when we were playing it.
Yeah. Paul has said in the past. Now he's gotten over it. But he used to have a really hard time with Age of Steam and games like that because he didn't like the sensation of being in debt. And Age of Steam, you are in debt for almost the entire game. And he was like, I feel, you know, at this place where I am in my life, I don't want to come to a game night and feel like I'm in debt and there's like this heavy burden over me. I get enough of that in the real world. I don't need that I don't need that right now.
So just like you should know your limits, you might also want to know your triggers.
Yeah, exactly.
And a game can flip triggers.
Yes, it can. Very much so.
You know, there's one more thing that I want to mention, and that is distractors. Distractors, for those of you who've taken the SAT, I'm sure almost everybody listening to the program has. They're the incorrect answer in multiple choice that seems so right, like such a general truth and so compelling that they're there to distract you, to make you pick that wrong answer over the right one. And I think for me, there are games that are very compelling, but I know they're wrong for me. And they compel me because of things that I like, but they're not going to deliver on them. Prêt-à-porter, the game that Ben came in with, was an excellent example of that because it felt to me like it was going to be a combination of The Gallerist and Project Runway. And I thought, oh, that's going to be fantastic. But it turned out to be basically an economic engine game in a little black dress.
Yep.
And it's not what I was looking for. It had all the signals of a game that I would enjoy, but the mechanisms meshed in a completely different way.
You feel like you got the bait and switch.
Not so much the bait and switch because I'm sure, like, Paul enjoyed the game.
And by the way, Elfinland could be argued is a little bit of a bait and switch. It looks very friendly.
It totally is.
It looks sweet. It
also looks like, I mean, you say elves and like you think you're going to have like an adventure and it's just a boot. You know what I mean? A little bit.
I was talking
visual cue. Sorry.
I was talking more about the punches in the face that happen in the latter half of the game as it devolves into battle royale. But okay.
What's interesting about Elfinland?
You're going on a grand adventure, and here's your boot.
Yes.
The problem for me with Elfinland is that there's so many games that we've played that I've loved, like Marco Polo, like Concordia, like Hansa Teutonica, that utilize the mechanism of having to visit these cities, having to maximize, or minimize your travel time, paying for the travel time, with camels, and all those things are things that I was expecting from it. No, because all those games were influenced by Elfinland and built upon it.
Correct.
But Elfinland is the bones.
Yes,
of that.
it is. It is where a lot of those design trends came from. Guys, I think that was fantastic. Is there any last thoughts we want to throw in here? But I think that was a really interesting discussion, and it should give everybody some room for thought. Like, what is it about games that I don't like? What is it about games that I love? And what are my triggers? I think that was an interesting thing we came up with that we don't always think of. But there are some things. There are little peccadillos that it's not even that I object to this in a game. It's that when this is the game experience, that is an experience that just gives me no pleasure.
Competition can be a trigger.
For a lot of people.
Direct competition. Area control can be a trigger because you can be attacked from all sides.
And once again, I'm on the other side of that. For me, I need some competition. The multiplayer solitaire is the thing that starts to turn me off when there's not enough of that. So it's interesting.
I would say my final thought on this is that even if you really take the time to refine what you know is your trigger or turn off, it may still be worth it to try a new game. Because as the casual gamer in this group, I'm constantly trying new games I've never played before. And even if I have an inkling about something that I might not enjoy it based on any of those factors, I'm still curious, and I'm still down to get the teach and give it a go, because sometimes you're surprised and you find something that you otherwise wouldn't have liked.
That's why we like you, Jake. We love the fact that you're willing to expand your horizons and try new things. It's awesome. It's awesome. I wish we all were more like that. Guys, that is it for that.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.